In this video, we are going to learn how to add fractions with unlike denominators. So please write down to add fractions with unlike denominators. Rewrite the fractions as equivalent fractions with a common denominator. Then add the fractions. Okay, so please write that down. Also, you're going to write down using the LCD. LCD means least common denominator, is often the fastest method as it requires the least amount of simplification. So I will show you what that means. And always make sure your answer is in simplest form. So we'll do 1/2 plus 1/3. Because they have different denominators, we are not allowed to add the fractions. The only way to add the fractions is if we make common denominators by creating equivalent fractions to each. So step 1, let's look at the denominators. They are 2 and 3. So first you're going to write the multiples of 2, maybe just a few of them, 2, 4, 6. Then write a couple of multiples of 3, 3, 6. We see something in common. That would be a common multiple or a common denominator for both. So that's step 1. List the multiples of each of the denominators and find where they have a common multiple. We found 6. So now you're going to create equivalent fractions for each fraction. So now let's take 1/2. So we make equal fractions, but now we have to find the numerators. So step 1, take 1/2 and see 2 times what gives you 6. 2 times 3 equals 6. So whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 1 times 3 equals 3. Now let's tackle the next fraction, 1/3. 3 times what gives you 6? Times 2. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 1 times 2 is 2. So now we created equivalent fractions with the same denominators. And that is called the least common denominator because it's the lowest one they have in common. It's the first one they have in common, first multiple. Now that they have common denominators, we're allowed to add. So we add the numerators, 3 plus 2, which is 5, and we keep the same denominator, 5/6. So our answer for 1/2 plus 1/3 is 5/6. Now let me erase this, and we're going to try another example. Please write, I hope you wrote that example down, and we're going to do another one. Basically, it's creating equivalent fractions for each with the same denominators. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, here's a visual representation of what I just did. 1/2, we show 1/2 and we show 1/3, but we realized they're not the same. Now let's split it up so it's equal, so we can easily see. Okay, 1/2 is really 3/6. Oops, sorry. And I went too far. And 1/3 is really 2/6. And when we converted them to have equivalent fractions, and now we add them, which is what we did before. You don't have to throw that. Just wanted to show you that. Now let's move on. Let's try a couple of examples. Let's try 2/5 plus 1/4. So if we try 2/5 plus 1/4, we first say to ourselves, can we add these? No, we can't because they have different denominators. So on the side of your paper, if you know in mentally, in your mental math, you can look at 5 and 4. So let's write the multiples of 5. We always start with the number 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, so I think 20 is going to be at 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Well, 20 is a common multiple of both fractions. And sometimes if you see a pattern, you can actually take both fractions, just multiply them, and that could be your common denominator, or you can list them. Now we realize the common denominator is 20 for both. So in order to make equivalent fractions, you take one at a time. So you take 2/5 first, and you have to multiply the same for the bottom and the top for the numerator and denominator. So 5 times what gives you 20? Times 4. And then the top is also times 4, the numerator. And we get 8/20. And then we do the same for 1/4. 4 times what gives you 20? This time it's times 5. And whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. And 1 times 5 is 5. And now we can add 13. 8 plus 5 is 13 and keep the denominator, 13/20. I want to show you a different one. You can do these two on your own. And I want to show you one more and then the video will be over. But I want to show you this one. If we have 2/3 plus 1/9, okay? Sometimes you can ask yourself, or you could always ask yourself, is the one of the denominators a multiple of the other? Well, let's see. So let's take 3 and 9. They're different denominators, so we have to get a common multiple or a common denominator. So let's take 3 and we're going to list the multiples. 3, 6, 9. Oh, look, 9 and 9. 9 is a multiple of 3. So we can stop and we're allowed to use the same denominator of one of the fractions as long as it's a common multiple. So the way you do this is, once again, create equal fractions with a common denominator of 9. And let's tackle 2/3 first. So 3 times what gives you 9? 3 times 3. And then let's do same to the top. 2 times 3 is 6. So 2/3 is equivalent to 6/9. And now what do you do here? Well, 9 times what gives you 9? 9 times 1. And whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 1 times 1 is 1. It's the same exact fraction because you're just multiplying by 1. And now their denominators are the same. So you just add the numerators. 6 plus 1 is 7. And you get 7/9. And that's how you add fractions. And you do the same with subtracting. Thank you.